They called it Project Genesis. Deep beneath the surface of Kel-Tar Prime, in a lab funded by the Zarn Dominion's High Science Council, the brightest minds from 13 allied species gathered to create the perfect warrior. Not a weapon. Not a machine. A living, breathing apex predator, based on the most terrifying creature the galaxy had ever encountered. A human. The Dominion's war with the Authari swarm was nearing its 5th decade. The Authari were relentless, emotionless, evolving with every battle. Conventional warfare had failed. The Dominion was losing planets faster than it could reinforce them. Desperation bred innovation, and desperation led them to human DNA. No one had seen a human in over a century. After the collapse of Sol, humanity vanished from galactic affairs. Rumors claimed they'd annihilated themselves, burned Earth to ash in a final civil war. But a few biosamples remained, hidden away in vaults and black archives, relics of a species that had once scared even the Zarn. Dr. Vel Oren, lead bioengineer and one of the few Zarn to have studied ancient Terran combat logs, stood over the cloning chamber with silent reverence. "We're not resurrecting them," he whispered to his assistant. "We're refining them. One human, perfected." The first heartbeat came at 3:14 cycle time. The subject grew rapidly, too rapidly. Within 3 days, it was the size of a mature adult male. Muscles denser than Kevlar weave. Bone reinforced with a lattice of pseudocarbon. Reflexes off the chart. But what frightened the team wasn't the subject's strength. It was the awareness. The clone, codenamed Subject 9, began tracking movement behind one-way glass. It ignored food it didn't want. When technicians adjusted environmental controls, it reacted. Not like an animal. Like a soldier. A thinker. A predator. On day 5, it spoke in clear, unaccented Terran English. "Why am I here?" it asked, eyes locked on the observation mirror. No one answered. Not because they didn't understand, but because none of them had expected it to speak at all. By day 7, Subject 9 had memorized every Dominion military manual uploaded to its cell's network. By day 10, it started training itself, doing drills in silence, creating weapons out of furniture, reconfiguring its cell's interface into crude tactical simulations. "This was a mistake," whispered Dr. Oren, but it was too late. Subject 9 had stopped obeying commands. It began testing boundaries, literal and psychological. Refusing sedation. Ignoring protocol. When they tried to confine it with neural dampeners, it broke free in seconds. "It's learning faster than we can control it," Oren said in a council hearing. "We didn't clone a human. We cloned an apex response. We created something worse than a warrior." The Dominion generals dismissed his concerns. "We built it to fight the swarm," they said. "Let it fight." But Subject 9 had other plans. It wasn't just learning about war. It was learning about them. Subject 9 stared into the mirror, not the one embedded in the observation wall, that was just a shield for cowards to hide behind, but the real one, the polished metal surface he'd fashioned from his cell's dismantled fixtures. He studied his own reflection like a stranger. Eyes too sharp. Skin too perfect. Muscles engineered with a surgeon's precision. But none of it told him who he truly was. Was he a weapon, or something else? His fingers traced the barcode on his left forearm, GX0099. Not a name. A designation. A label for something built, not born. Yet behind his piercing gray eyes was the quiet storm of purpose, and memories he was never given, flashes of Earth. The crunch of snow under boots. The smell of spent casings. Blood. Screaming. A voice shouting orders in the dark. He'd never been there. Not truly. But it haunted him like déjà vu from a dream he hadn't lived. In the control chamber above, Dr. Oren was losing control of the project, and he knew it. "His cognition is advancing beyond our predictions," he warned again. "He's showing signs of emergent memory formation. Not just intelligence. Identity." General Vexkar, the 7-limbed Char overseer of military development, scoffed. "It's data retention. Echoes of the neural imprint you copied from the original genome. Irrelevant. He's not following protocols. He doesn't need to. He only needs to kill. Orin clenched his jaw. You think you've built a slave. But I think we woke up a ghost. Subject 9 spent hours at a time in silence. Studying. Training. Building crude puzzles and then solving them faster each time. He watched Dominion combat footage, but lingered longer on human history, wars, uprisings, insurrections, revolutions. In each, he saw a pattern, and in each, he saw himself. On day 14, he made his move. It began when the nutrient pump stopped working in his cell. Routine maintenance was dispatched, a pair of lightly armored tech drones. They entered without hesitation, only one exited. Security was alerted. Subject 9 was still in the cell. Calm. Quiet. Sitting cross-legged in the center, hands folded in his lap. As if nothing had happened, the guards didn't see the broken drone arm hidden beneath the floor panel, or the subtle shift in the vent systems he'd accessed using stolen passcodes. They didn't see the traps he'd set, not for escape, but for answers. That night, Subject 9 triggered the internal override and cut power to half the facility. In the brief window of chaos, he slipped through the ducts like a shadow. Cameras blinked offline. Alarms failed to activate. By the time security realized what happened, he was standing in the main archive chamber, face to face with his origin file, human specimen, last confirmed warrior class Terran operative. Known by call sign, Monster Zero. The file was heavily redacted. Most of the logs had been wiped. But he found enough. Enough to understand that he wasn't born to protect the Dominion, that he was bred from the DNA of someone they once feared. Footsteps echoed behind him. Dr. Orin entered slowly, unarmed. You're not supposed to be here, he said, almost gently. Subject 9 turned. I'm not supposed to exist, he replied. Yet here I am. Orin held up a hand, not in defense, but in surrender. You need to understand. We were desperate. The swarm is. I've seen your war, Subject 9 interrupted. But I've also seen the truth. You didn't want a weapon. You wanted a shield you could control. Orin looked tired. Is that not the same thing? Subject 9 didn't answer. He walked past the doctor. No threat. No violence, yet Orin felt a chill rise across his spine as the clone's voice echoed softly behind him. Monsters aren't born. You built me. Now you'll learn what I was built for. The Dominion should have learned by now. Never underestimate silence. Subject 9, no, he had stopped calling himself that, moved through the facility like a ghost. Cameras failed to track him. Thermal scanners glitched. Security logs showed empty hallways and locked doors. Right before the lights flickered and entire systems went dark, but he didn't run. He didn't escape. He watched. Every locked door revealed more than the last. Training arenas built for slaughter. Clone failures stacked in cryogenic silence, alien instructors dissecting human minds like puzzles to be solved. They hadn't just cloned him, they tried to clone hundreds before, and failed. Every time. Their bodies couldn't handle the pressure. Their minds broke. Some turned feral. Others didn't survive the first week. But 9, he had lived. Not because he was obedient, but because something in him refused to die quietly. He was learning what they feared most wasn't the swarm. It was him. General Vexkar watched the containment logs in silence, each one displaying errors, failures, red alerts muted by a frightened tech crew. I told you we were close, he hissed, 6 of his eyes narrowing at Dr. Orin. He's almost ready. Ready for what? Orin snapped. He's breaking protocol. Rewriting his neural directives. We don't know who he is anymore. Vexkar's mandibles clicked. He's a weapon. That's all he needs to be. No, Orin said softly. He's something else now. He stood before the armory door for 12 full minutes, not because he couldn't get in, he already had the codes, memorized from a console 2 days prior, but because he remembered something that wasn't his, the scent of gun oil. The cold weight of armor plates. A voice, you pick a weapon like you pick a promise. You use it right, or not at all. He had never heard that voice in his life, and yet, it echoed in his bones. The door opened with a hiss. Lights flickered on in sequence. Rows of Dominion gear stood like tombstones, pulse rifles, shock grenades, kinetic mesh armor. All too clean. Too sterile. Then, tucked into the corner like a discarded relic, he saw it, an old human combat rig. Damaged. Scorched. Functional, familiar. He touched the metal chestplate, then lifted the blade strapped beneath it, primitive compared to plasma rifles, but perfectly balanced. His fingers moved across the hilt, muscle memory guiding him like a whisper from someone long gone. As he strapped it to his back, the internal alarms blared. Activation protocol, Omega 9. Target escape imminent. The Dominion wasn't going to let him keep thinking. They were done watching. 10 minutes later, Vexcar stormed into the operations deck. Where is he? One technician was sobbing. Another backed away from the main console. He's not escaping. He's heading for the training decks. Vexcar froze. Why? The holoscreen flickered to life. One of the younger clones, barely into development, no more than 15 years old, stood alone in the center of the simulation arena. Scared. Shaking. And then, the shadow of him stepping into view. No, Orin whispered. He's not trying to run. He's trying to teach them. He didn't speak to the young clone. Not at first. Instead, he set the blade between them. Nodded. The boy didn't move. I'm not here to kill you, he said finally. I'm here to make sure you survive. The child, Subject 22, looked up. Aren't you one of them? He shook his head. I was made by them. That doesn't mean I belong to them. The alarms grew louder. Dominion guards were en route. Heavy units. Live ammo. Orders to kill. He picked up the blade, turned to face the steel door, and whispered to the terrified boy, remember this moment. It's the one they tried to erase from us. The moment we said no. The steel doors exploded inward, not from detonations, but from sheer force, bent outward as if something inside had refused to remain trapped. Dominion guards stumbled back, weapons raised, but what emerged wasn't a wild beast. It was a man in a tattered combat rig, walking slowly, blade in hand, face calm, and behind him, a frightened boy clutching a training baton. The guards didn't hesitate. Orders were clear, terminate, but he moved before they could. A flash of steel. The crunch of armor. Sparks. Screams. It wasn't a fight. It was a statement, and the message was simple: we're done being your experiments. Up in the command center, Dr. Oren stared in horror. He's not just protecting the boy, he said. He's guiding him. Training him. Vexcar, he's building a rebellion. Vexcar hissed through his fangs. Then we burn the facility down. Kill all of them. No. Orin snapped. You don't understand, this isn't just Subject 9 anymore. He's something else now. He's remembering. Remembering what? Being human. Hall by hall, they moved like a wave, Subject 9 leading, others following. Not all clones were stable. Some trembled, others fought back. But the spark had been lit. The Dominion had always believed clones couldn't feel loyalty. That shared DNA didn't mean shared will. They were wrong, because every clone that joined wasn't just escaping. They were reclaiming something buried deep in their blood. Resistance. In the barracks, a pair of older subjects stood between 9 and the cryolabs. You think you're a hero, one spat. You're going to get us all decommissioned. 9 didn't blink. You're already dead. You just haven't stopped breathing. The other clone raised his rifle. A mistake. The boy behind 9 raised his baton, struck him in the throat. 9 didn't smile. He just nodded once. The baton dropped with a clang. The boy looked stunned by his own instinct. You're learning, 9 said softly. Good. The cryolabs were the heart of the facility, hundreds of clone tubes lining the walls, humming with energy. Most were empty. A few housed failed attempts, distorted faces, broken limbs, frozen screams, and at the center, a stasis pod labeled Subject 0. He knew, even before reading the designation, this was the original. The base from which they had cloned him. His eyes narrowed. Inside the pod was a woman, scarred, unconscious, but unmistakably human. Who is she? The boy asked. She's the reason we exist. He stepped closer, staring at her face. I've never seen her before, but I know her. Oren's voice crackled over the comm system. She's the last surviving vanguard. The final warrior Earth sent before the collapse. We recovered her body after the siege of Arcturus. She wasn't dead. Just broken. So we preserved her. Used her as the genetic seed. The truth landed like thunder. They cloned her, to make us. The sound of incoming reinforcements broke the moment. Point 9 turned to the others now gathering. A dozen clones. Some armed. Some injured. All watching him. You wanted to be more than weapons, he said. This is your chance. What about her? Asked one. That he looked back at the woman in the pod. We wake her. Is that wise? I don't care. He placed his hand on the stasis panel, because if anyone deserves to lead this rebellion, it's the one they tried to erase first. The chamber lights dimmed as Subject 9 activated the stasis pod's manual override. Warning alarms chirped. Fluids hissed. The pod's surface cracked with frost, then slid open with a hydraulic sigh. She lay there, pale, unconscious, suspended between life and death for over a century, and then, her eyes snapped open. Steel gray. Piercing. Alive. Subject 9 stepped back. The woman sat up slowly, groggy but alert, scanning her surroundings like a soldier waking on a battlefield, and recognizing the terrain, her gaze fixed on him. Report. She rasped. That it wasn't a question. It was a command. The others stared, unsure whether to kneel, salute, or run. Subject 9 nodded once. Dominion Research Facility. You were used to create combat clones. I'm one of them. She looked him up and down. You move like me. We all do. The woman swung her legs off the pod. Her body bore scars, surgical, combat-born, and ancient. But her presence radiated control. I'm Captain Kale Virex, she said. Vanguard Corps. Earth Defense, what's left of it? A younger clone whispered, the real one. Kale cracked her neck. Where's my armor? 9 tossed her a weapon instead. You'll have to earn the rest. She grinned. Fair. Elsewhere in the facility, Dominion forces scrambled. She's awake. Vexcar roared. You said her neural core was damaged. Dr. Oren wiped sweat from his brow. It was. We patched it. We didn't know she'd ever. You patched a war goddess and left her with an army of versions of herself? Yes, Oren muttered. In hindsight, maybe a strategic error. Back in the cryolab, Kale stood before a wall of failed clone tubes. She traced her fingers along the glass. How many? Thousands, Subject 9 replied. Most didn't survive the war. Or the refinements. Her fists clenched. They broke me. Then copied the pieces. You were the blueprint. The beginning. Kale turned to him. And what are you? I was supposed to be the perfect version of you. But I remembered too much. And I broke the cycle. A silence passed between them. Then she said, good. Because I need someone who remembers what we're fighting for. They made for the command deck. More clones joined them, some limping, others barely clothed, but all wielding stolen weapons and a sense of rising purpose. Kale barked orders as if she'd never stopped being their commander. The other clones responded instinctively. It wasn't programming. That it was something deeper. Inheritance. They reached the lift shaft. Dominion troopers blocked the top level. Kale turned to the group. No retreat. No surrender. You follow me now. Subject 9 stepped beside her. We always did. They launched upward, magnetic boots propelling them up the vertical shaft. Gunfire met them. Kel twisted mid-air, firing with ruthless precision. .1 shot. 1 kill. .9 followed with brutal efficiency, the others flooded up behind them like a storm. On the deck above, Vexcar waited, not with soldiers, but with the failures, clones too mutated to be controlled, held in containment for years. Hulking, twisted things that bore only shadows of Kel's features, they roared and lunged forward. Kel's expression didn't flinch. I recognized them. They were broken, 9 said. No, she growled, raising her blade. They were abandoned. And then she charged, straight into the monsters made in her image. The battlefield stank of blood, plasma, and burned metal. The broken remains of Dominion soldiers were scattered across the command deck. The monstrous failures lay still, some torn apart, others cradled gently by the clones who recognized, in those twisted faces, something they might have become. Subject 9 knelt beside one. Its 3 arms had shielded 2 smaller clones from a plasma blast. I thought they were lost, he said softly. Kel stood behind him, face hardened. They were. But they still chose to protect us. There was no victory music. No cheers. Just silence and the weight of everything they'd survived. The central terminal sparked behind them. Kel approached it, lines of code scrolled, alerts, kill orders, shutdown protocols. And at the bottom, Unit 9, termination authorized. Priority threat. Kel Prime, status, unstable. Facility lockdown in T-300 seconds. She touched the console. They're going to vaporize this place. 9 stepped beside her. We can override it. No, Kel said. We can't. But maybe we don't have to. She began tapping commands with brutal precision, uploading clone records. All of them. Evidence. Proof. The war crimes. Everything. To who? To everyone. The Dominion's network firewalls lit up as a virus bloomed across the stars. Every citizen in their empire, every outpost and capital ship, every enemy and ally, began receiving real-time video feeds. Of the failed experiments. The discarded clones. The monstrous hybrid units, and Kel, the original, standing over the truth. Then, the terminal lit red. Self-destruct initiated. 180 seconds, Kel turned. Get them out. Every clone who can move. 9 blinked. You're not coming. I started this. I end it. He grabbed her arm. We started this. They locked eyes. Behind them, the clones, hundreds now, gathered in the corridor. Waiting. Kel looked once more at the room full of her shadows. Then she turned. Fall back to the hangar. We leave together. They moved through smoke-filled corridors as alarms howled. Kel led from the front. Still limping. Still bleeding. But unbroken. The hangar was a graveyard of broken fighters. But 9 found one, half-functioning, one engine flickering. We'll never make it off-world in that, Kel said. He grinned. We don't have to. Just high enough. The escape was chaos, gunfire. Explosions. A few clones fell behind, some too wounded to run. They stayed. They chose to fight for the rest. The battered dropship blasted off as the entire facility detonated below, a shockwave rippling through the stratosphere. From orbit, they watched the fireball bloom on the surface like a second sunrise. Kel sat in silence. One of the clones, a girl barely older than 16, whispered, "What do we do now?" Kel looked at 9. Then out the viewport. We survive. We rebuild. And when the time comes, we make them pay. Sometime later, in the heart of the Dominion capital, a broadcast hijacked every screen. A woman in combat armor. Gray eyes. Old scars. This is Kel Virex. You tried to copy me. You turned me into a weapon. Then you made monsters in my name. She leaned in. They're awake now. The feed cut. Epilogue. In a distant star system, hidden from Dominion scanners, a new base was forming. Small. Makeshift. Alive, the clones trained, healed, laughed. Kel and 9 stood together at the edge of a cliff. You know, she said, we're not really the same. No, he agreed. I'm the last version. The monster they couldn't control. She smiled. That's exactly who I need.